Michigan, 22-year career Air Force fighter pilot. Tim was county mayor in Knoxville. And he called me and said, you know, I know your mom's now living alone in that house. I'm gonna have the sheriff's deputies run by every now and then just to make sure she's okay. I will go to war for Tim Burchett any day, any place. Welcome, my friend, Congressman Tim Burchett. One more thing, Tim always gives bigger than you ask. He has signed 10 of the Constitutions. The first 10 of y'all that grab Joni with a $100 bill, you get one of the 10 Constitutions signed by Congressman Tim Burchett, limited edition, but it certainly has just a little bit extra in the coffers tonight.
I don't know what, having me sign the Constitution, that's a little scary. I'm not sure. Somebody asked me one time to sign their Bible at a church, and I said, no, I think that's only left for the author. Not me. So, thank y'all. And auctioneer, I always remember my daddy one time. Steve was right about my daddy. He was not a businessman, obviously. He was a career educator, and he was actually the dean of student conduct at University of Tennessee, and obviously Steve didn't visit him on that account, and Dad was also in charge of the Freshman Honor Society. I'm pretty sure Steve didn't visit him on that account either. So, but we did grow up on the tough streets of Westdale. Like I said, I didn't know where my next meal was going to come from, either the Sizzler or the Shoney's. We grew up, it's kind of surreal life back then. You know, Steve's mama and daddy were wonderful, wonderful people. His dad served our country in time of war, in the time of peace, and he was the real deal, and they were wonderful people, and I miss them, and I miss my folks as well. But Daddy one time came home from an auction, and he came home with 3 VW Beetles, and Daddy used to smoke a pipe, and I believe this story because my daddy told me this, but he was telling it to my mom, and Mom was like, Charlie, what'd you do that for? He said, well, Joyce, he said, I really didn't mean to buy them. They were up to $300, and that was, you know, career educators, $300 back in the 70s was a lot of money. He said, but Daddy said he inhaled on his pipe and it got hot and he took 3 fingers off, and the auctioneer called him $300. I believed it, but and one of those VWs didn't even have a dadgum engine motor in it, and we left it in the driveway and we just made a Ford out of it. So I was pretty lucky. Mom and Daddy were quite the people. But I want to thank the Jonies for inviting me out again. Thank y'all so much. Y'all are wonderful. Thank you. The last time y'all better quit clapping. I always say this, but politicians, you clap for politicians. It's like at the Baptist church when you say amen and towards the end of the sermon, you're going to get 5 more minutes out of it. And you'll never beat the Methodist to the Sizzler. I can tell you. You're going to be in line behind them. The last time I was at the Ray Stevens Cabaret, it was for my buddy Rick Williams' Christmas party. Where are you at, Rick? Right there? All right. Thank you, brother. It was packed in, but I think y'all got him beat. The last time I had lights this bright in my face, they were attached to a state trooper's flashlight. And he asked me if he knew how fast I was going. I said, yes, sir. And he said, you know what the speed limit is in Tennessee? And I said, yes, sir. As a matter of fact, I said it. I carried that bill, and we became fast friends. But I'm glad to be sitting here. My buddy Steve Gill, of course, long time. You know, he and my daddy were thick. There's not a lot of conservatives on university campuses. Mark Moore, there's Johnny Garrett. Johnny's right there. Johnny, appreciate you. I think we're sitting at the next governor of the state of Tennessee's table, Marsha Blackburn. I've had more chicken dinners with her than I think I've had with Colonel Sanders. So, and Jake McCowan, his wife Rochelle. Jake, I'm talking about you. Gotta look at me right now. So, don't sing. When they said somebody you couldn't sing, I thought, I looked down at my phone. I just don't want to make eye contact. They're going to call me up here. My buddy Senator Bill Powers out of the the Queen City of the Cumberland, he's from Clarksville, my daddy's hometown. His mama and my daddy went to school together. Kerry Roberts, let's see, my buddy John Rose is over there. John, he's got the full crew tonight. Those poor kids, you're gonna stun them with all these chicken dinners. Let's see, Bill Hancock. Bill, where are you at, brother? Right there. Don't anybody ever kid you, Johnny, about that bald head, all right? Just tell them it's a solar panel for a think tank. Look, I'll be brief, and I know, and I'm sure I missed somebody here. If I missed you, it's because I'm ticked off at you. And actually, I can't read my dadgum notes. I don't know what I pay people to write these things for, because I never follow them. I don't know. I just get up here and I get ticked off about something, and somebody said, "Did you really say that yesterday on Fox?" And I go, "I don't know, did I?" You know, and they show me the quote, and I say, "Well, I guess I did." But anyway, and I know nobody woke up this morning and said, "Dadgum, I hope I get to hear from Tim Burchett today, and I hope he goes really long." So I'll keep it brief. But I always remembered, I was at one of my rural counties, and when you're in Congress, you get invited to a lot of these things. And, you know, if they say, "We're only going to be there an hour," you better book about 3 to 4. I always go, it's like the Gone with the Wind movement, you know, so it's going to be 4 hours. Just count on, I always block off 4 hours. Gone with the Wind was about 4 hours long. But so I get there, and it's going pretty smooth. You know, they've got some good barbecue going back there. And I work the crowd. And I'm sitting down, and they say, and the person gets up and says, "Hey, we're going to change it up tonight," which is always a bad idea. Changing it up, I'm texting my wife back home and say, "Hey, I ain't getting home before midnight tonight." And the guy says, "We're going to ask everybody that's running for office to get up and speak 2 minutes."
Oh.
And another thing, if you're ever doing one of these things, no, exactly. Never turn loose of that dadgum mic, because you ain't going to get 2 minutes. Because you get some of these folks running for office, they're evangelicals, and man, they're going to have an altar call after they can finish off. So it goes through there, and everybody goes through their little spiel, you know, and I'm thinking, man, this thing's going on forever. This guy gets up, literally, he has a neck tattoo. It's a nice neck tattoo, but it is a neck tattoo, okay? It wraps all the way around him. He's covered head to toe. And he says his name, he says what he's running for, he says, "This dadgum thing's gone on long enough," and he sits down. Well, I swear to you, he got a standing ovation. And he's still in office to this day. So always remember that, so I'm gonna try to do it, keep it brief. But I want you to know you're doing some great work. Getting the Constitution in the hands of as many young folks as possible is something we really need, especially on the 250th anniversary of our great country. I don't think most members of Congress probably have read the Constitution, because they sure as heck don't follow it. And I'm mad at the left because, AOC, she is a Marxist, but she admits it at least. I always call her my friendly neighborhood Marxist, because we're buddies, and I always have her on my videos, and I always tell everybody, don't look at her too long, she'll steal your soul. Try to keep it light, which is actually a quote. But the reality of all that is that sometimes I'm more mad at my own dadgum party, because I think we should know better. We should really know better. And a lot of the times we don't. And when I see young people today and what's going on in this world and where we're headed as a country, we're on a grease pole to hell. Literally and figuratively. These kids coming out of school today, they hate capitalism, they hate that flag, they hate our veterans, they hate everything it stands for. And they're taught that in their schools. We run off all the good teachers because they're not teaching anymore, they're teaching to a test. And then you have these teachers virtue signaling and poisoning our kids' little minds. I was mayor of Knox County, we have great schools in Knox County. They produce stalwarts like me and Steve Gill, obviously, so y'all are going to move to West Knoxville now. But, when I was mayor of Knox County, I homeschooled my daughter. I homeschooled her because, you get stuck with one bad one, and that can leave a big impact on a kid. And we have got to take back control. We have got to take back control. I was at the Capitol. I think it was the day that they reversed Roe v. Wade. And they come on the floor and they said, whatever you do, do not go across the street. There's protests going on. We think there's going to be a riot. So I went on across the street. And I'm walking through there, and I remember the Democrats came through, and it looked like this scene out of Planet of the Apes, when they were all dressed up in their riot gear, going to fight, and they were escorting all, and I mean, they looked like they were catchers in a Major League Baseball game. They had all this protective gear, all these Capitol Hill policemen, and these federal agents. I'd never even seen them dressed like that before. And they were escorting the Democrats to watch it and to mock us. And I walked through a little patch of people, and this reporter, they're kind of smart alecks, they don't like us anyway. And they said, so Congressman, you're here? And I said, yeah, I am. And they said, are you carrying a pistol? And I said, is that any of your dadgum business?
Yeah.
And they said, do you have a permit to carry that pistol? And I said, as a matter of fact, I do. It's called my United States Constitution. And that reporter said, I'm going to print that. I said, ma'am, I'm from Tennessee. You just made my lead go up double what it was. Go ahead and print the dadgum thing. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of what they've done to us to make us ashamed of this wonderful document. And I'll never forget it. And I thank God for it. My dad fought and killed people, so I can sit here and do this.
Amen.
I can sit here and walk around and say what the heck I want to do. I can worship my God how I choose or not to worship it. And as mad as it makes me, people can sit for the singing the national anthem. I don't agree with it, but they can do it. It's their right. I think they're wrong, but it's their right. And I don't agree with too much what the radical left says, but they do have a right to say what they say. And we got to take note how people use their free speech. They're telling us what they stand for, and we need to remember that at the ballot box. These people tell you when they don't stand for a person who did not win the Congressional Medal of Honor, dadgum, they earned it. When they don't stand for that, when a sweet little girl, because I get a little emotional about that. I married my beautiful wife and adopted her little girl, and she was about a little over 5 when we met. And I remember that little girl was run over by an illegal alien, and President Trump was introducing them, and he stood up and he had that little girl on his shoulder, or cradled her, I guess, kind of, and she leaned up and gave that daddy a kiss on the cheek. And I've been in that situation. Now, my little girl was she was run over by a horse, but that's a different story. And I cried during that too. But she kissed her daddy and she just smiled. And then I looked over there at the Democrat leadership, and they looked with disdain over that. I thought, man, do these people, what do they hate more? Do they hate Trump more, or do they hate our country? And I think they hate them both. They hate them both. They hate Trump. Yeah, he's not polished. But go read your dadgum Bible. King David, I mean, he was a dirtbag. He slept with Bathsheba. He had her old man killed. Ran him out there. He was the best general. And they pulled back the troops and got him clobbered out there. But God had favor upon him. And I believe God has favor upon Donald Trump. I don't know if he's a Christian or not. I've prayed with President Trump before, and I've had conversations with him. And I wish people could see the man that I've seen up close. Again, I don't want him teaching my daughter's dadgum Sunday school class. But I sure like him sitting in the White House at Pennsylvania Avenue.
Yes, sir.
Let me get off this stage here pretty quick, because I got a long way to go. Apparently, I got to make another skateboard when I get home, but that's all right. Everybody asked me about this, and this isn't in my notes. Everybody asked me, said, what'd you say to Trump on the way out? I told Gil this a minute ago. And what'd you say to President Trump on the way out? And I told the press, I said, well, I told this story about our cat in the barn. And she goes, oh, shut up, Burchett. If you're not going to tell us, just leave us alone, the press. And the truth is, everybody, when they grab the president, they always say something like, oh, we want to talk to you about the trade embargo on Congo and how it's affecting the price of, whatever. And you don't want to talk about that coming off the dadgum floor. He's got 535 egos. He's got a caress as he's walking down that aisle. So I told him, I said, when he walked in, I had a conversation with him that morning on the phone for about 14 minutes, and we kind of caught back up. When he walked in, when we walked out, I said, and he goes, "Hey Tim," and I said, "Hey Mr. President," and I said, my wife's got this cat. So she named it after you. He goes, "Oh yeah." I go, "Daddy, calls it Orange Cat Bad." I said, "I'm gonna give you the initials, but you can fill them in. Don't hold it against me. I'll put $1 in the swear jar." But I said, "That's the meanest SOB in the bar." He goes, "Tell Kelly I said thank you." That's what we talked about. But I guarantee you, he don't remember he talks about any free trade with Congo. He remembers how he talked about that stupid cat. And he is the meanest SOB. It was sitting in my notes. I know we got to get out of here and I got to get on the road. But I was coming out of the barn about 2:30 the other night, and this thing, been working on skateboards. I have insomnia, so it's something to do. So this blur runs by me. We must have about 8 or 9 cats. I don't know. You can't catch them. I know you animal rights people out there don't send many dadgum letters. You can't catch them to get them fixed. So I don't know. And the coyotes take care of them when we get too many of them anyway. And I don't like the coyotes either. If I catch them, I got an AR that I'll take them out. But I don't care. It's on my property. I can do what the heck I want to do. But it's right here. But so this dadgum blur of this gray cat we got runs in front of me. And then all of a sudden I see this dadgum owl flying towards it, chasing it. And I don't know if you've seen an owl. I mean, it looks like a trash can with wings. It's just going. This thing must have had 6-foot wingspan. And it's chasing that gray cat. And then all of a sudden, Orange Cat Bad is chasing that dadgum owl. I've never seen anything like that. So I don't know. But anyway, so I'm friends with him because he is the meanest SOB in the barn. But real quick, I'll tell you a quick Pelosi story. Since this is about the Constitution, I got a First Amendment, okay? So, y'all heard that, y'all seen that movie, Don't Look Up? Everybody seen that movie? It's a good movie, it's okay. It's really just making fun of us as conservatives. It's about COVID, but it's really about a meteorite's gonna hit the earth, and if you don't look up and see it, it's not gonna happen, sort of like what we said during COVID. And anyway, so we're watching it. It's got some foul language. Me and Kelly and Isabel was a little younger back then. And Kelly, my wife, said, if that meteorite hit the earth, she'd be okay with it. Rick, did I say something offensive to you? I'm sorry. I know you're a big fan of Nancy Pelosi. I'm just kidding, brother. You about to slice my tires. That's all right. My wife's car. She never liked you anyway. No, anyway, so Kelly says, baby, if that meteorite hit the earth, we'd be okay. I said, "Why's that, honey?" She said, "Because we'd all be with Jesus." And I said, "All right, well, that's all right. I know that's not what Revelation says is going to happen, but I'll go with it." And then Isabel. My daughter's a really smart little girl. I adopted her, so genetically she has none of my brain cells. But every time she gets in trouble, my wife always says, "That's on you, TimB." And I said, "No, I don't know." Anyway, I said, "What?" She said 3 things she decided. I said, "What are they, honey?" And she said, "Cockroaches." And I said, "All right." She's paying attention during that homeschooling for biology. I said, "That's right. They would survive just about everything." I said, "What else?" And she said, "Your dog Roscoe." Now, poor old Roscoe, he's been mauled by a bear. He got hit. I know he got a bear in East Knox County. We did. He ate somebody's miniature pig. It's the craziest thing I've ever seen. So we got a bear come through there, and Roscoe comes home that day with a big old split down his head. So, and he got hit by 2 cars. And he ran through an electric fence, and it was, set up to 10, and it went to 12, and the other dogs. Do what? Change his name to Lucky. Well, he's dead now, so I can't do that. But anyway, and so that was the second thing to survive. And I said, "Well, honey, what's the 3rd thing?" And she said, without batting an eye, she said, "Nancy Pelosi." Well, I told Speaker Pelosi that. She was walking out. I guess she was going to get on her broom. I'm not sure. Boom! There you go. She doesn't advise me on my stock trading, so we're good. And I told Pelosi that, and Pelosi she looked at me and said, "You tell that Isabel I'm a survivor." And I said, "Dadgum, don't we all know it?" So anyway, look, the same folks that are screaming no kings, they're the same dadgum people who hand-selected and coronated Kamala Harris to run for president of the United States without a single vote being cast.
Exactly right.
The reason we don't have to worry about a king in this country, folks, is because some very brave men, and now women, and women back then, they stood up 250 years ago and declared independence. And a few years later, they sat down to write our beautiful Constitution to establish law and order. Some people like to pick and choose when to follow the Constitution, like when President Obama deported 3 million illegals and bombed 7 countries without congressional approval. The left didn't seem to mind that. Or when Bill Clinton bombed an aspirin factory to get his affair off the front page. The left was pretty quiet. The media was painfully quiet. You can't pick and choose when to follow the Constitution. And I'm thankful we have a president right now who wants us to be respected on the world stage. Look, I don't take myself very serious, but I take this job very seriously. I'm the product of the American dream. My mama was from Cheatham County. Her oldest brother, Roy, was too old to go fight. He enlisted when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. He came home, went back at 32 years of age, became a sergeant, died in what they called the hedgerow shortly after the invasion at Normandy. And my daddy said he would have been the type of guy that would have been president of the university. Not like the communists we have now, but literally a very good Christian man who understood what it was about. Mama didn't have electricity until she was a senior in high school. She told me the story about when they came to the house to tell them that Roy had been killed. My grandmother went to the back room and cried for 15 minutes and came back out and fixed supper that night for the family. They didn't have electricity till she was a senior in high school. My mama was 17 years old and she flew an airplane in service to our country, what was called the Civilian Air Corps. Technically, she's not a veteran, but she did what she could do. And of course, my daddy was in the Marine Corps. He enlisted. He was, unlike myself, my dad had a very high IQ, and they sent Daddy to Georgia Tech to become an officer. And Daddy was afraid he'd miss the war, so he just did not take his midterm exams and failed himself out. Was automatically enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, went to basic training for 8 weeks, was issued a Thompson submachine gun, and was on a little cleanup on a little island called Pebblewood. His colonel was a man named Chesty Pullard. I believe he was awarded 7 Navy crosses. And then Daddy was on the invasion of Okinawa and fought there, and then he went to China and fought the communists for a little bit after the war, and then he went to the University of Tennessee for 40 years, and I guess he fought the communists over there. Never received any medals, never sought any recognition, but he was the real deal. And to the day he died, if you ever woke my daddy up, you always woke him up by his big toe, because he might be on one of those islands, and he'd pin you against the wall. But every night, I go outside, and I look at that dome of the Capitol, and I think, wow, Charlie and Joyce Burch's baby boy is United States Congressman, and I do not take that lightly. More people have played professional baseball than have been members of the United States Congress. It makes me sick when I hear congressmen say, "I can't afford to do this job. I need to go home." Well, dadgummit, go home. Go home. We're sick of hearing you gripe. We're sick of you doing insider trading, making money off of us. I do want to say this about our veterans. I know we've got several. Raise your all's hands again. I want to make sure you don't have to stand up. Thank you. As a Christian, I owe y'all, the men and women that wore our country's uniform, everything I have in my life but my salvation. And I thank you for everything you've done for us and you continue to do for us. Folks, I cannot stress enough how close we are to losing this country. We are literally one flu season away from losing the majority. These elections coming up, these midterm elections, yeah, we got it pretty good here in Tennessee. We're fairly safe, but we were safe in a lot of other areas and they stole it from us. We gotta put so many dadgum points on the board that they can't steal it. You've got to take our country back. Please don't let the thousands of men and women that are buried all over this world defending our great country and our great Constitution, do not let them be in vain. Don't let that 48-star flag that hangs on my wall, that was hung on my uncle's casket, don't let it just be another piece of cloth that gets thrown in the dustbin of history. Remember those people. Revel in their lives. Remember the opportunities that they gave up so you and I can be in the freest country on God's green earth. Let's take our dadgum country back, folks. Thank y'all very much.
Congressman Burchett.
Yes, sir.
I guess the UFO information hasn't been declassified yet, I'm sorry. Not yet, okay. All right, next we have the final